Welcome to Six Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde, bringing you the jazz and swing scene from the Capital Region. Jazz Voices, all right. I'm so honored to be speaking with you all here tonight at Peg Delaney's house. Thank you so much for allowing me in and for us to spend this evening together.
Hi.
It's nice to be with you, Sarah.
Yes.
I think first maybe it'd be helpful for everyone to say their name and what they did in the band.
I'm Jody Shayne. I was one of the singers. I'm the little one.
I'm Colleen Pratt.
Teresa Broadwell. I was a singer and I also played the violin.
I'm Peg Delaney. I put this group together.
Then
And
Peg,
you played piano.
Oh, yeah.
I played piano. I played piano and did most of the arranging.
Yeah.
well then Peg, I'd love to hear from you first just a little bit of the history of about when this band got started. I know that bands don't just often start day one, but it kind of takes a while to come together.
I was asked by Kathy Speck down at Rensselaerville Institute to put together a band, and the first thing that we did was Women Play Jazz. She came up with a name, and I put together a group of different people. And then I realized that was 1992. Then the following year, I realized that I had been working with Jody. I knew of Teresa. Colleen I had known since she was maybe 12 years old because she used to do folk masses at this church that I used to go to. And I loved each of their voices because they were unique to each other. So back in 1993, we did a Rensselaerville Institute concert, and it was with Pete Tuigo on bass and Jean Garone on drums. And then after that, we got a different bass player and a different drummer, and it was Otto Gardner on bass and Bobby Halleck on drums. But we were continually working on increasing our repertoire. You know, so I was taking a lot of high-lows, Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross, and I was rewriting it because those all had guys in it, but dealing with the three women, I was rescoring it. Teresa did several songs also for the group, you know, where she had already had some arrangements that she brought in for this group. We had many places that we could play for a while. You know, I mean, trying to get a six-piece group working, you know, you can't do it like really in a club. You need a concert kind of space. And because the music was hard, it was a lot of rehearsing, a lot of scheduling rehearsals. And so I think we ended up running out of places to play, you know, but we were together for many years and we did schools. We used to go into schools and teach about jazz improvisation, and yeah, it was a good project. It was a really good project, and these are some of the best jazz singers you've ever wanted to hear.
So what was the first concert or performance that you all had together? What was that like?
1993, Rensselaerville Institute, and we were just upstairs watching the video of it and laughing at how young we were. 1993, how many years?
What great clothes we wore.
26 years ago.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And at that point, did you feel like you were a band already, or was that sort of a experiment or just for fun at that
We
point?
only prepared a small number of songs because of the difficulty of the arrangements. So we did probably half a dozen songs that were arranged for the group, and then we did individuals.
Okay.
Yeah.
At that point, I believe we thought that was going to be it, that we were just
Yeah,
doing
we
that
weren't-
one concert. And it was
Yeah.
after that we realized how much fun it was. And
And we
And there
started.
was-
we
there
were
was
getting
some
requests.
demand,
Yeah.
too.
There was a lot of demand
Yeah.
for us because it was unusual, and like I say, the group was so good and the arrangements were so hard and so unusual that, you know, even now I'm listening to this stuff, I'm thinking there's no group doing this stuff. There's nobody in this area that's doing this.
And what do you mean by the unusual arrangement? I'm not a musician myself, so just help me understand a bit.
Well, some of the arrangements are very difficult. What I would do,
Tight harmonies.
I would try to give each of them a chance to have the high part or the low part. Naturally, Teresa's got the lower. She always had the lower voice, so
Not always.
But I didn't want to always put her, down in the lower. So I mean, we would switch around, like who was singing the high part, the middle part, the low part.
It's
So
always challenging.
it was
just challenging.
always challenging, and
rhythmically very challenging, and we really we learned how to phrase together. So by the time we had been doing it for a while, it was really like it was a very tight sound, and we breathed together. You could really. It sounded like one voice in harmony. It was pretty.
And when I say that they're unique, Jody is unique in where the pitch of her voice, the timbre of her voice, her phrasing. Colleen has these pipes, and they all scat sing, but they all scat sing differently from each other. Teresa's got this benefit of having the violin also. So
That's really interesting.
there was this added instrument, that we could do unisons with a bass, or she and I could do unisons with the piano and the violin. There was just so much more latitude because of having that extra instrument.
Not to mention the amazing vocalese.
Yeah,
The
Teresa
vocalese, yeah.
already had a pretty good repertoire of vocalese that the rest of us didn't have, at least not to that extent.
And for your listeners that don't know what vocalese is,
Or Colleen.
it was coined by, probably Eddie Jefferson was the first person to pioneer the style where you would take an instrumental solo and write individual words for every note and rhythm in that solo. And so you were kind of memorializing that solo at the same time you were spitting out all these words and syllables that would go with every single note. And Eddie Jefferson, King Pleasure was another singer that did a lot of vocalese. And then Lambert Hendrickson Ross was the group, 3 singers, 2 men and a woman, who really put it up, took it up another notch. And we did a lot of their songs. We did many of their songs and kind of rearranged it because for 3 female voices. But vocalese, you'd maybe sing the melody and maybe harmonize it. And then some of us took turns singing the different solos and with the words that went to every single rhythm. And it's very challenging, but it's really fun.
What were some of the more memorable performances that you all had together? I'm sure it'd be hard to choose, but does anyone have one that jumps to mind?
We did an Ellington concert with Nick Brignola at Schenectady Community College, and that was
The Empire Jazz Orchestra.
That's right. It was with the BJO.
that was pretty exciting.
And what made that one particularly memorable?
Just because of Nick, just because Nick.
Well, and Leah
Russo
was
was
there.
there.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So cool.
But
Great players.
Nick would be backstage with us right before you're ready to go on, telling these hilarious stories, and you'd have to sort of pull yourself together to go out on the stage because he was such a cut up.
And I wish I had gotten a chance to meet him, but he sounds like he was kind of legendary in the Capital Region.
Yeah.
Well, he grew up in the area, so he was always like, the big name that had really done well. He chose not to leave the area. He chose to stay here. He has, wife and family here. But he was known throughout the world because he was so good. I remember him telling me that he could be in Japan walking down the street and they would be selling things, like outdoor, like these little, bazaars. And he said there would be ashtrays with his picture,
Oh, wow.
on the ashtray in Japan. So, he was well known. He played a lot at Justin's. He played with the biggest names in the world, So I wanted to know how to improvise, so I transcribed a whole lot of his solos and I turned it into a book, and I got permission from him
Oh, cool.
to do this, and I was selling it through this guy called Jamie Abersold, who is a music distributor for jazz books, all sorts of jazz
Play along.
aids.
Mostly
Play along.
Jazz education.
So I have a book of transcriptions, and that book of transcriptions has been used, throughout New York State for when they do NISMA competitions. Like for if you're going to have a baritone sax player, a kid have to play, he would do a level 6 sight reading to be adjudicated, and they would use that book of my transcription. So I got to know him. He would come over to the house. We would talk about things. I wish I had saved all the jokes he used to send me by email. I really do. And he's gone now. I mean, he's been gone since I think 2002. He got throat cancer. But his wife is still around, and family, they have a son and daughter, and so I keep in touch with Yvonne,
I wrote some lyrics for this group too.
Can you tell me about a couple of them?
7 Steps to Heaven. It has a vocalese in the middle where each of us take turns, and I tried to incorporate what I thought each of our philosophies about heaven might be in 8 bars.
That sounds really challenging.
She nailed it. She did. Boom.
Put it in the book.
Not terribly meaningful, but but fun.
Well, what was the jazz scene like when you were in the heart of this band and doing a lot of these different concerts together? How would you have described it to someone unfamiliar?
The 70s and 80s were the best years that I can remember for playing in clubs and, being able to do concerts and, different kinds of things, private parties, things like that, where people would hire jazz groups. And then really our heyday was the 90s, and things were still really pretty swinging through the 90s. So, we had opportunities.
And a place for jazz. We did a concert there that was packed.
Yeah, that was memorable.
Yeah, and Swingtime Jazz Society. We did concerts for Swingtime Jazz Society, and our audience was the largest audience they've ever had.
Oh, wow, that must have been a great feeling.
That was a Stockade Inn, right?
Stockade Inn, yeah. Well, you have leaders of groups, so you've got all of that audience from each leader.
But this group really, it had a pretty strong following in its own right, because no one else was doing what we were doing.
We were the one thing to be proficient vocally. We did our parts, and we all sang our parts strong. It was all musically correct, and it was fun. But we had personalities that worked. Our chemistry was amazing, I thought. We delivered the song with a smile, and people loved our chemistry.
Well, they liked
our
us.
energy.
Mm-hmm.
We were entertaining as hell, if you ask me.
I think it was a unique, the three of us, because separately we're so different. Our styles are so different.
That was the uniqueness I was trying to get across.
I think people got a charge out of seeing the way we worked when we were together, because it was
exactly.
It kind of
Absolutely.
Our uniqueness blended in a strange and wonderful way, and people were fascinated by that and drawn to it. And I think it was like a fun, if we were playing somewhere, pretty much we were guaranteed to get a crowd.
Yeah, I mean, the minute the song started, we were all in it together, and in the in-between times, we might argue on the bandstand. We might rib each other or what. Not me, of course.
We never argued. We just played around a little bit.
But when you counted off the song and it was like bam, we were all there, and a lot of that was Peggy too. I mean, we practiced hard. We worked hard on this stuff.
Yeah,
when I would do the arrangements, I would send them what I had written on the computer, and then I would also send them their line that they had to sing, like the individual line, so that they could, so I made it so that here's Jody's line, she gets to hear it, she gets to practice it, and gets to practice it with all of the voices at the same time.
I do, and that saved me, because I can't read.
I used to do
Maybe
individual.
Maybe you didn't
Yeah,
send mine, because I don't.
Yeah, it's all right. It doesn't matter.
Oh, I do.
You learned it.
She saved me.
Yeah, you probably didn't need.
I can sight
Yeah,
sing.
she can sight sing. Yeah, she's
Not
the
perfectly.
most. She's the most educated one of all of us.
Educated.
And a lot of good it did me. It's like that old saying, can you read notes? And the guy says, not enough to hurt my playing.
We'll be right back with Six Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde. Stay with us.
Fascinating rhythm, you got me on the go. Fascinating rhythm, I'm all a quiver. What a mess you're making the neighbors.
We'd like to thank Giants of Jazz Radio, based in Lancashire, England, for airing this show. The station brings you the best in classic jazz, playing tracks from the 1940s through the 70s. You can support the station by visiting their website at giantsofjazzradio.co.uk and clicking donate. And now, back to the show.
Take a day off, run along, somewhere far away off. Oh, how I long to be the way I used to be. Fascinating rhythm, I won't stop begging on me. Rhythm, rhythm, rhythm.
And what about each of you individually as jazz musicians? Because Jazz Voice is what brought you all together, but did you also pursue solo paths or other configurations?
Wow. I was doing some big band writing, and I was in a big band with Diane Marlowe had a big band with Joey Thomas, Stan Sepetowski. So I was in a big band, and then Diane would keep me working, and she hooked me up with this guy named Earl Davis, who sounds like Tony Bennett. He's great. So since 1990, I've been doing my trio called the Peg Delaney Trio with Earl Davis on drums, and he sings. But that was just one of the things that I was doing. I mean, I was also, yes, my husband Bill was always with me. But I was also working with Sonny, and Pearlie Russo was singing. Otto Gardner was playing bass. Sunny Day was playing drums, and I was playing piano. We worked several years down at the Hilton Hotel, which is now the Crowne Plaza. But we did several years down there. And then I worked a lot with Colleen. I landed a job at the shipyard where it was a duo gig. It paid $125 for the duo. So you were getting $62.50, I think. Yeah. So and I hired each of them. I would, I would have, Jody and I, and then Colleen and I, and Teresa and I, and very often Bill would play for free.
Or my husband.
Or
Also,
Russ would play. Yeah.
Plays bass as well, and he would play for free.
Yeah. $62.50. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the pay has gone way up since then.
way up.
Now we make $75.
Yeah, it's gone up. Yeah. Well, one of my projects now, it's like I'm still working with great singers. I work with Colleen, I work with Jean O'Connor, I work with Eileen Mack. We do a lot of nursing homes and things, So it's like my career is continued, but it's because I'm a piano player that can work with a lot of different people. Drummers don't get to work so much, and I mean, if you're a trumpet player, you're hardly going to work at all, I work down at Duke's, down at the casino now. I do, a lot of work with Jean down there. I work at Grappa, Stockade Inn. I mean, so there's still places that I work, but my big project now is I'm got all of my original songs and I'm putting them into big band form for a 16 or 17 piece big band.
Oh, wow.
And in March, I'm going to get the band together and we're going to record all of my songs. So that's my big thing that I'm working on.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I guess no one wants to follow now.
Oh, no.
Well, before Jazz Voices, and during Jazz Voices, we all had our own gigs. And before that, I had I've always had a group that I was the leader. And it could be a trio. My husband is a very fine jazz guitarist. And we work a lot with, his name is Michael Nowakowski. Yeah. And we work a lot with Pete Towigo. We also work with Otto Gardner and other bass players, but mostly Pete Towigo. And then that's kind of our foundation, the three of us. And then we'll add Cliff Brucker on drums. And then Leo Russo plays saxophone with us when we can afford that next piece. Mm-hmm. And for a long time in the 90s, there was a big swing dance revival. Yes. So we put out a record, it was a CD, but I would still call it a record, of kind of swing dance type stuff. And we made our money back on that CD. It did very well. It was sold internationally. We sold records in Japan and Germany and Italy, but it was kind of fun. And then after about 20 years of trying to play jazz as much as we could, but kind of being stuck in the swing dance phase, then we kind of got away from the swing dance world a little bit and concentrated more on jazz. And our recent CD that we put out about a year ago is kind of a little bit of a tribute to Nat King Cole. So we did a bunch of songs that he had recorded. And we've done a few concerts with that, and that's a 6-piece band with Leo Russo and Cliff Brucker on drums and Michael Lampkin on the piano, added to Mike and myself and Pete Tuigo. And we've done a number of concerts with that band, and that's been pretty successful so far. But, we just keep plugging away, all of us, we try, we're out there, you find out about a new club and you call them up and see if they'll hire you, and it's just the same old.
Yeah.
So I went to Berklee College of Music, and then I went on the road with a top 40 band, and then I was in New York for a while, and I worked a lot of clubs in New York, and I ended up coming back up here because I could get work with a trio. I could do more of the music that I wanted to do. For many, many years, I headed my own band. I wrote my own arrangements. I've put out a couple of CDs that I wrote all the lyrics to. One was with Paul Mastroianni. He wrote all the tunes. And then the more recent one, I wrote lyrics to several different well-known jazz musicians, Michelle Petrucciani, Pat Metheny, Enrico Piranesi, and got clearance to do their stuff.
That's cool.
That's really neat.
Yeah. But in the last few years, I've kind of backed off a little. I do some private things, but I'm getting ready to maybe get my feet wet again.
Jump back in there.
Jody wrote lyrics to a few of my songs, and she's just a beautiful lyricist.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful lyricist.
Where do you feel like, Jody, you get some of your inspiration from?
In my lyric writing, I try to reflect on things that have gone on in my life. So I've written some lullabies. I've written songs about, it's crazy stuff.
She's got one that I love. It's called I Wanna Be There. And it's all about after she's gone, she's dead. She wants to be there to see what people are going to say about her. And she also says, you can forego the dirt. I love that.
It's a little bit irreverent.
Oh, but it's a fun song. I love it.
We've had so much fun over the years. We didn't know each other that well when we got together, if at all. We didn't know each other's names, but getting to work with them and getting to know them, they're my friends, and now we're making it a point to get together and have dinner together a few times a year, which is great.
Well, I would like to ask, do you feel like being together in the same band that you learned something about yourself as a jazz musician that you hadn't before being together?
Oh, I can answer that one.
Okay.
Because I wasn't the jazz musician. I learned so much from these ladies just because, I sang standards, but being in this group with them, it's amazing what I learned. I think I came out of it definitely on the high end. The history of jazz and jazz vocals, these ladies have all that.
But I think Teresa had been in vocal jazz, but you did.
Harmony groups, yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of groups.
And Colleen and I had both been in more popular, rock bands where we sang harmony, but learning how to phrase together and learning how to blend, and those things, it got to be second nature, but it was a lot to learn initially. Mm-hmm. And I think we learned from each other a lot.
Absolutely. As I told you when we last spoke, my mother was a big band singer, so I think, the love of singing the standards I definitely got from her, and I was able to sing the standards, but actually making it more of a jazz vocal singing with these guys was definitely the key.
But Colleen has a voice that can cut, it can fill a room. She doesn't. She just has a really
big mouth.
She has a big presence when she sings. But when the group is together, you can't tell who's singing what part. It all just, it sounds like one.
Blend, chemistry and blend.
Yeah.
They brought a lot of songs. Teresa and Jody brought a lot of songs to have me, rewrite or come up with the arrangements. But it was things that I was unaware of. Like Colleen is saying, they were much more into the whole jazz vocal scene. I was listening to Bill Evans. I was listening to the piano trio stuff. They were the ones that educated me also.
And Teresa and Jody, where do you think that your love of the history of jazz comes from? Or was it from your family growing up, or just from traveling around? Jody, it sounds like you were in lots of different cities and experiencing different scenes.
Yeah, I had been in a jazz vocal group in New York. I guess I forgot about that, the Vocal Society. But I think it's just from listening. You listen to one thing and it leads to another, and I've always taken listening very seriously, so I don't know. I don't know what it comes
Yeah, I
from.
think I was in a kind of a kitschy band that sang, we called ourselves the New Moon Swing Band. This was back in the 80s. So now I'm really dating myself. And we toured all over the country. And it was vocal harmonies, but it was goofy old stuff like from the Mills Brothers and, early swing. What was that group that sang with Glenn Miller? Not the Pied Pipers. Was that the Pied Pipers that sang with Glenn Miller? I can't remember what they were called. But we did a lot of that kind of stuff. And, with chunk guitar playing and swing fiddle and 3 and 4 part harmonies. And when we were on the road, back then you had a cassette player in your car. And we had one in our van. And I would have Ella and Sarah Vaughan and Lambert Hendrickson Ross, and you'd be on a road trip, you'd be in the car 7-8 hours a day, and and I would listen to this stuff over and over and over and over, so that when that band broke up, back in like 1982, I think that band broke up, I was ready. I had a whole repertoire of stuff I could sing, because I knew all these songs, because I'd been listening to this stuff for years on the road. And like Jody says, listening is so key to, getting kind of your head into the phrasing, the harmonies, and then, like she also said, you hear one thing and, well, where did they get that? Well, they got that from so-and-so. So then you listen to so-and-so. Well, he got it from so-and-so. So then you go back and you listen to that musician or that group. And all of a sudden, you've learned the etymology of a song, and you've also been exposed to several versions of that song, and you pick what you like from it, and you take this from this person and this from that person. Next thing you know, you've got your own thing going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Every once in a while, you have a student that'll come to you and say, "I want to learn how to sing jazz." And you say, "Well, what jazz are you listening to?"
Yeah, right. They're not really listening.
I say, "Oh, Linda
Yeah.
Ronstadt," or I mean, it's just the people don't always understand the authenticity, I guess. You've had more students than I have.
I taught jazz singing at the College of St. Rose for many years. And like Jody said, they'd come to me for jazz vocal lessons, and I would say,
Listen.
"Who do you listen to?" And they'd say, Britney Spears or whatever. And I'd say, "Okay, well, you got to stop listening to that right now. I mean, if you hear it on the radio, fine, but you got to..." Sometimes if you listen to one singer and focus on that one singer for a couple of months and then move on to another, I also used to recommend, pick a couple of albums and listen to them over and over and over, because then you start to get the phrasing, you start to see where they're going harmonically, and next thing you know, it becomes a little more intuitive. Then you can move on to another singer or another album of that singer that you love, and just start to broaden your repertoire of ideas and inspiration from that. But I had some students that took that to heart, and they're out there. Mia Scirocco is my pride and joy, because I had her at the College of St. Rose, and she grew up, she was around her grandparents a lot, and they were playing swing music. So she didn't come to me cold, not ever having heard any swing music, and that made a big difference for her. She's a wonderful singer, and she studied classically, which is something I never did. But so she developed her pipes in a really healthy way, and then branched out into jazz. And if you don't swing when you're singing, it's not jazz. I mean, not every jazz thing has to swing, but if you can't swing, I don't think you can play jazz. So it's kind of a precursor.
I'll never forget feeling like I had learned to listen better in a sense when I was dancing with someone in a swing dance and he froze, and I felt like the bass kind of jumped out, and it was before me and I was hearing it, and it was so interesting of what he was making me pay attention to, and I feel like I danced better and differently after that because I suddenly was isolating instruments and then seeing what they were doing together in just different ways, and it makes the experience so much richer, I think, from at least the dancing side.
Dancer say that.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
That's really wonderful.
About when did the group kind of breaking up sounds so horrible, and here you all are still together and friends. So, but what was the sort of era?
We got busy.
We all got busy with our own projects, but I was just going through some of the publicity stuff that, I had taken from newspapers and things. And one of the last concerts we did was 2006.
Stockade Inn, was that the last one?
Van Dyke. I think it was the Van Dyke. But it was hard to keep the group together because was not a lot of work, and because each time we did a performance, it was always many rehearsals just to be able to get that tightness that we needed to get. And we were all so busy. So, we just kind of let it, end.
Because
we
really,
our schedules and
to do those gigs, we would have had to have at least had 3 rehearsals.
right, and everybody was
And
busy.
Some of us were raising children, some of us had full-time jobs, and we all had our own music careers as well.
Yeah.
So even though we loved it when we did it, there was a certain point where we just said, let's let it go for now. Or for good.
Except that I played a gig in St. Louis, Missouri, on the river. There was a huge, kind of a tourist area in St. Louis. And there was a group of 3 old ladies, and they were in their 80s. They were really old. And they were very popular. And I remember on our breaks going to hear this group of these old ladies, gray-haired ladies, and they sang bawdy songs, like really dirty songs.
That's gonna be
So
us.
having it was such a novelty. And I remember when we decided to
Always said that.
when we decided to keep playing gigs after that first gig, I was like, yeah, we'll be that group of old ladies singing bawdy songs.
80 years old, we're going to be singing.
I just wanted to do that so
that's gonna
bad.
be
So
us.
that still could be in our future.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That is,
I'm in.
Yes.
I'm in. Get my commitment right now. I'm in.
The lyric possibilities.
I want a hot dog for my roll.
Yes.
I want it hot, I don't want it cold.
Isn't that, I want a little sugar in my bowl, isn't that?
Yeah, right.
I need a little jelly on my jelly on
Well, thank you all so much, and I really want this next performance to happen. So, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My disposition depends on you. I never mind all that.
Thank you for listening to 6 Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde, and those were the women of jazz voices: Peg Delaney, Colleen Pratt, Jody Shayne, and Teresa Broadwell. This show is listener supported. If you're interested in contributing to the project, you can find the link to our donations page on our website at 6count.simplecast.com. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can let me know what you thought of the episode or who I should speak to next by emailing me. I'm at 6countpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter at 6countpodcast.
And I'm with you. Dear, sometimes I'm happy. Sometimes I feel so blue, I don't know what to do. Oh, my disposition depends so much on you. Just retain your
Worth its weight in gold.
pretty music I've known.
Got a little soul and you're cultivating it.
Was in that mellow tone.
Everybody's listening, everybody's gonna hear you dig what's happening to you. Break down and listen to me. So when you see it mellow and breezy and bright, just right. Yeah, play mellow and people will listen and learn more. Sweet and low.
That's Teresa. Here's the vocalist. You're coming up.
Each time anybody's written down, gotta be their very own mellow tone. Like fluffy as a cloud, never very loud. Everything is being mellow, so never been about.
These songs are really hard.
Everything you say and everything you do is gonna hang around a little while because it's really be true. And if I ever get through,
Wow.
no one who told me would never worry me because you know, don't you know the blues and what they color all the ten and
He doesn't have to breathe.
Breathe.
Yeah, it's so fast and crisp. And
Yeah, sure, but the only blue that we know is in the
Song of love. A song of love.
We had fun.